Now, the visiting Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris, is expected to reiterate her country's support for Ghana to secure an International Monetary Fund deal. Now, Ghana is seeking a $3 billion bailout from the fund to address shortfalls in the economy, but a deal with the Paris Club stands in the way. President Akufo-Addo has paraded a high-level government official to make Ghana's case in ongoing bilateral talks at the Jubilee House. Now, more on that shortly, but addressing welcoming party at the Kotoka International Airport, Kamala Harris says we will build on previous engagement with President Akufo-Addo to advance the potential of the two countries. Kamala Harris will also visit Tanzania and Zambia to wrap up her tour of the continent. She believes Africa has a huge potential to grow and prosper. Deputy Director of Communications at the Jubilee House, Jefferson Saki, says President Akufo-Addo and Kamala Harris will discuss matters of mutual interest.
Chairman of the Economic Community of West African States or ECOWAS, the president is privy to a lot of security situation in our sub-region and especially our continent. Basically touch on that. But what is most important is that a lot of the decision and what the president will be talking about will come out as a result of the bilateral, discussion that the two leaders are going to have. But obviously, we know where we are now as a nation, as a continent, and as a world. We know a lot of nations are struggling economically, and so the president will use this very key opportunity also to talk about the need that our two countries find ways and means of tackling the many economic challenges that the world is facing. But we are very confident that this particular visit is going to be a win-win situation for both countries.
And Jefferson, finally, how would you react to the claims that Ghana appears to be drawing too close to the US, which may of course come at our detriment? The fact that the East, China and other key partners that we used to hold in high esteem may also get offended about how we are treating or giving much more priority to the other side. Is that of concern to the Jubilee House as well?
Ghana is a sovereign state. Ghana has been a close friend with a lot of African, European, Asian, Australians, people all over the world. Our relations with countries is not based on, political reasons. We are at peace with every nation that is at peace with us. I mean, over the past, if you clearly follow our economic situation, you remember that our foreign finance minister recently returned from China. These are very close relations that we've kept for a very long time, and so we don't see this visit as one that is making a clear statement and all that. But of course, our relations with the United States has been a very strong one for a very long time. Our relations with China and all other countries have been very strong for a long time. If you listen to the speeches of our president, he's always focused on the world living side by side, living together in peace and in harmony. And so that is how we see this visit. It's purely on friendship basis. Ghana is at peace with all nations, and it is important that every country that wants to visit Ghana is welcome. President Akufo-Addo has visited the United States quite a number of times since he became president. He has visited China, before. He's been to Japan and a lot of these countries. And I can clearly tell you, in fact, when he was a foreign minister, then I was also, the media relations officer at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And I clearly remember one of the trips that we made, for example, to Russia. It was at that time one of the key visits, if I clearly remember, it was his very last foreign visit to that particular country, and also as a foreign minister. So if you follow this trend, you know that Ghana is basically at peace and real economic friendship.
And Jeff, I thought that would have been the last, but since you're talking about China, IMF is on the table. The US Vice President represents a country that has some quota at the board level. Are we likely to make that plea, try and negotiate diplomatically just to get that board approval from the IMF?
I think that particular question is beyond me. I think it is something that if the president wants to address, that's going to happen at the press briefing tomorrow. That is going to happen immediately after the bilateral meetings between our two countries. I mean, as long as the media are going to be there, I'm sure that you keep this particular question so that if you meet the president, you ask him.
And your message to Ghanaians?
Well, I expect all of us to see this visit as a very important visit. It tells us that, yes, our president's foreign policy has been a very strong one, especially if you see the number of leaders that have visited our country over the past 6 years. All high-profile visits have happened here, and so that is how I want Ghanaians to look at it. But I'm very confident and very sure that looking at the international presence, the international media, the level of coverage that we are seeing today, that this particular visit will go a very long way to help the relations between our two countries.
Now let's take you to the Jubilee House now, where our presidential affairs correspondent Elton Brobe is joining us live from. Elton, what's happening at the Jubilee House now?
So, Brace, so what is happening is that preparation is still ongoing here at the Jubilee House to formally welcome the U.S. Vice President. She will be here to formally meet with President Akufo-Addo, and then we'll enter into a series of meetings before the joint news conference that will be hosted by President Akufo-Addo and the U.S. Vice President. Now, let me walk you through what is going to happen here today. Now, she will come through the main gates over there, as you can see. That gate, that main entrance, is only open when the president is coming in to observe the change of guard, and also for visiting, you know, high dignitaries, including visiting foreign presidents and all that. So she will be accorded the courtesy of coming to the Jubilee House through that main entrance over there. Now, when she's here, the Ghana Armed Forces will mount a guard of honor, and per the program as we have it, they will play the U.S. national anthem together with the Ghana's anthem, and then after President Akufo-Addo will now walk over there, welcome her, and take her into the main premises of the Jubilee House. So what you are seeing, I'm sure, is last-minute preparations to ensure that everything goes according to plan at 11 a.m. when we are expecting Madam Harris to, you know, walk into the Jubilee House with her entourage. We are told, you know, hundreds of them to the Jubilee House for the program itself to start. Now, for those who are covering this event, we have some media personnel from the U.S., from Ghana. They've also positioned themselves for the event to start. Now, when she's here, she will first hold a brief discussion with President Akufo-Addo at the ceremonial room, quite a small room that can accommodate only 50 people. That will be the formal welcome address. And then after, President Akufo-Addo will lead her to the auditorium, where the U.S. Vice President, together with her entourage, and this is made up of government officials from the U.S., businessmen, and other invitees. And President Akufo-Addo will also parade high government, you know, officials, and this is going to be the bilateral discussion where the issues on the table will be tabled for them to discuss. This, I'm told, will last for like an hour. When they are done, the decisions they will take will form the basis for the news conference that will follow at the main banquet hall here at the Jubilee House. But I can say that I am privileged to share with you some information that just came through from the U.S. Embassy. And from what I've been told, Vice President Kamala will meet President Akufo-Addo of Ghana at the Jubilee House, and this is what the U.S. government is communicating, and affirm the strength of our bilateral relations and the long-standing ties between the American people and the Ghanaian people. Now, it goes on to say that the Vice President and President Akufo-Addo will discuss a range of global and regional issues, including democracy, good governance, human rights, regional security, long-term economic growth, and microeconomic stability, and our work together on the UN Security Council. Again, on democracy, good governance, and human rights, the two leaders will discuss efforts to stand up for democratic principles on the continent and their shared opposition to recent democratic backsliding. I don't know what that is, but I'm sure that in the hours to follow, we'll get to understand what they describe as democratic backsliding. On regional security, President Akufo-Addo and the U.S. Vice President will discuss the Sahel and efforts to promote stability, including through new U.S. funding for stabilization effort. And I'm told that more details will come regarding this new U.S. funding for stabilization effort. Now, the bigger elephant in the room is Ghana's proposal before the IMF board seeking a $3 billion bailout to address shortfalls in the Ghanaian economy. Now, so as you may be aware, Ghana has already concluded the domestic debt exchange program. It is left with the external debt exchange program. Already the finance minister is in China to convince the Chinese authorities to accept Ghana's proposal for debt cancellation and then other members of the Paris Club. It is unclear the outcome of this meeting, but the U.S. has over the period supported Ghana verbally and officially on Ghana's position as far as application before the IMF is concerned, because the U.S. is a major shareholder in the IMF. Now, this is what they will be discussing. On debt, the White House says that the Vice President will reaffirm the U.S. position that all bilateral creditors should provide meaningful debt reduction and express support for Ghana's engagement with the IMF. They will also discuss efforts to support long-term economic growth and increase U.S. private sector investment. So this is what they will be discussing. And of course, what we've been told is that the U.S. will make a clarion call to members of the Paris Club to, accept Ghana's proposal for debt cancellation. If this is done, then Ghana will move a step, in fact, a giant step towards getting an IMF deal, hopefully by the end of March or early April. Now, the Vice President will thank President Akufo-Addo for his leadership in strengthening ties between Africa and the African diaspora. So this is in brief what will be discussed between President Akufo-Addo and the U.S. Vice President behind the scenes, and later they will address a news conference to elaborate on some of the issues that they discuss. So, Brace, these are privileged information, and of course, I'm sure they will add more flesh to the bones I've just given you. And then beyond midday, when we have the news conference, we will also put some questions before them with the aim of getting answers to these questions.
Interesting there. Do we know where else you'll be moving to after that news conference or after the meeting at the Flaxton Jubilee House today?
So again, the White House, communication provides some insight into what will happen after after actually midday this afternoon. So Vice President would visit Vibrate Space. We are told it's a community recording studio for young creatives located at Freetown Skate Park in Accra as part of an effort to engage directly with young people and highlight the dynamism and creativity taking place across the continent. Now there she will tour the facility and meet with a group of musicians, including up-and-coming artists that represent the new generation of West African entertainers. Her visit will spotlight the growing creative economy and underscore the strong links between Ghana and the U.S. artistic and diaspora communities. The Vice President will be joined by actors Idris Elba, which I'm told that he's already in town, Idris Elba, and then Sherry Lee Ralph, also with the Vice President delegation. And then later, the Vice President would also develop a reputation. Ghana has already developed a reputation as a music destination, and after attracting huge crowds to Global Citizen Festival, Afro Nation, Afrochella, and a Black Line Festival between September 22, the Vice President will also meet organizers of these events and to see how best the U.S. can help, with the aim of deepening it to ensure that the youth have something to do on their hands.
Interesting, grateful there. That's our Presidential Affairs correspondent, Elton Brobe, joining us from the Jubilee House. There will still be live there to bring you an update on this particular meeting between U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris and the President of the Republic, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. Now moving on.